first order of business is going to be, sorry, it's a little bit harder for me to find things here. It's going to be case number 866, which is 165 Worcester Street, is requesting a variance. So at this time, I would ask the board to introduce themselves. My name's William McCusker. I'm the chairman. Marianne?
Oh, Marianne DeRozier, Vice Chair.
Kay?
Kay Reed Clerk.
Bill? You muted?
Bill, you're muted.
You're muted, Bill.
Excuse me, Bill Yeomans, member.
Brian?
Brian Waller, member.
Seith?
Sitaraman Ganesan, alternate.
Carl?
Carl Parisi, alternate.
Bob?
Bob Berger, zoning enforcement officer.
Katrina?
Katrina Koshvo, CBA secretary.
The way we'll proceed is the clerk will read the petition, and after the clerk has read the petitioner will have the floor and have the opportunity to present their case. There's going to be a 15-minute time limit for a petitioner. This time limit can only be extended with the consent of the board. The petitioner shall present required information, and comments should be specific. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition will have an opportunity to do so. Letters in favor will be read into the record. Anyone in opposition will be allowed to speak. Any letters will be read into the record. Opposition will also have a 15-minute time limit. After all the evidence is presented, the board will enter discussion, hopefully come up with a decision. At any time during this hearing and prior to a decision being made by this board, the petitioner has the option to request that the petition be withdrawn without prejudice or continued until a later date, at which time further evidence in support of the petition can be provided. Anyone wishing to speak, somehow you're going to get our attention and we will allow you to speak, but please do state your name and address for the record when you do so. The board is going to ask questions from time to time, but all conversations should be directed through the chair. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to read the petition.
Case number 866, the Grafton Board of Appeals has received a petition from David K. Meridian for 165 Worcester Street, requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a variance to allow relief from the required lot area, which is 6,039 square feet, 20,000 feet required, 13,961 existing, and relief from the required frontage of 125 feet, which is required, 89 feet existing to build a two-family home. The board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, June 25th, 7 p.m. to consider this request and to take whatever action is necessary, including the granting of a finding, special permit, variance, or other necessary relief necessary under the zoning bylaw. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection on the Town of Grafton website, the Zoning Board of Appeals 40A page. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March stay-at-home advisory, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. The June 25th ZBA meeting may be assessed via either of the following means. I guess that's posted, right?
Yeah.
Katrina, I don't need to read
Yeah,
that.
it's all
Board of
posted.
Appeals, William McCusker, Kay Reed, Brian Waller, Seith Ganesan, Marianne DeRozier, Bill Yeomans, and Carl Parisi. Case number 866.
Thank you. Do any of the sitting members have any conflicts that would require them to recuse themselves from this hearing?
No.
So at this point, I believe the petitioner has the floor. I see Attorney Leno, how do you pronounce it?
Leno.
Leno. Is your client here or is it just gonna be you?
My client is here. He's listed not as a panelist, I guess as an attendant.
Listed as an attendee, but he was sent an email to become a panelist, so I don't know why he's in as an attendee, but I can.
Could you, if you could call on him, I know he wanted to just introduce himself before letting me take over.
Okay, I just clicked on him to allow him to talk.
Thank you. David, I think you're
Oh,
muted.
wait a minute,
now,
hold
but-
on, wrong one. Nope, he's okay, he's allowed to talk.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow ZBA members. My name is David Meridian, and I live at 2 Creepy Hill Road, North Grafton. I am a longtime Grafton resident, and I love, I believe in, and I try to be active in all things Grafton. I am here before you today to ask for and hopefully get variance on the my property located at 165 Worcester Street, Grafton, North Grafton. I would like to build a building that meets with all the current setbacks on the property, which is zoned R20. The property has gas, sewer, water, electricity on site, as it previously had a gas station and a garage on it. I would now like to introduce you to my attorney, Eli Lano, who will present for me. Thanking you in advance for your consideration in this. Eli, thank you.
Thank you, David. So this is a lot that was created under a slightly unusual scenario in the Subdivision Act, where it was created under the 81L provision, which, just to go over briefly, is an option for subdivision which creates and has an existing buildings exemption. So in places, and the majority of the case law while I was researching this is in places like the Cape and the islands, where a family might have had 3 houses in one generation, but then divides so that each house is on its own individual lot and then sells them off. So you use 81L and then get to 81P to do an A&R plan all through the planning board. And that's how this was done. In 1979, these lots were created, splitting off one lot that had the house and the barn. The house is still existing. I'm not sure about the barn. And then the lot that's now 165 Worcester Street, which held the auto garage. So the interesting thing about 81L that was clarified in Pallets versus the Zoning Board of Tisbury in 2015 is that these lots, although you can divide them and create the new lots and have them recorded, as was the case here, no zoning protection remains for any of these because it doesn't give you an opportunity to go to the planning board and then get around the zoning board, who has obviously jurisdiction on things related to the zoning bylaws, as is the case here. So previously, this garage had its right to remain, but when the garage fell into disrepair and eventually actually fell into the ground and was removed, this lot lacked zoning protection to be a buildable lot. So Mr. Meridian bought it last year, and now we are looking for the opportunity to build something on this. We'd like to do a residential building as it's in the R20 zone. The lot has about 75% of the required frontage and about 2/3 of the required area, which makes it similar in size to many of the lots in the neighborhood. It's actually bigger than all of the lots existing on Hingham, Falmouth, and Gloucester Streets to the back in that subdivision there, and then a similar size to many of the other lots in the neighborhood. And then in that Pallets case, one of the interesting things about 81L is that they don't want to allow you to use it as a springboard into further nonconformities. So with respect to the zoning bylaws in the town of Grafton, we have designed something on this site so that we would put up a building, a residence that fits with the allowed uses and then also would fit within all the setback requirements, as my client said. So deferential to the zoning bylaws there. It's interesting. Obviously, I've been in front of this board a number of times for variances and different towns around the Commonwealth. And the general idea is soil shape or topography under 40A section 10 for variances. But in this situation, 81L actually is what creates the hardship here, because these lots were created in such a fashion that they disregarded the zoning that was required. So had this lot been created and had enough zoning or enough area previously, we wouldn't be here. But because of the way it's created, even without any substantial derogation from the bylaws or anything, there's nothing that prevents the hardship of this lot being completely unusable without your relief. So obviously the financial hardship and the hardship for any use to this is severe, that without relief from this board, this lot will remain blighted and my client will have no opportunity to help improve this one piece of the neighborhood to the detriment of obviously himself as a developer of this lot, but also to the detriment of the community if it just remains unusable. I know 81L isn't something that comes up as much before your board, I assume. So I'd be happy to answer questions on it and kind of discuss whatever the board would like to know about this.
All right, the first question that I have actually is, what variance are we looking for here? Is it?
So our lot in an R20 zone has about 13,900 square feet. So it's a little short on area. And we have 89 linear feet of frontage where 125 is required. And those were both the numbers created by that 1979 81L split.
Oh, there's the 89. Okay, so it's 89. So it's just those two, frontage, 89 feet of frontage, and 13, where'd that number go? 13,961 of lot.
Correct. So a third of an acre and almost 90 feet of frontage.
All right, so, I mean, I look at this as a small lot. I'm not quite grasping how this small lot got created plays into this. A small lot's a small lot. Whether it's a small lot because that's the way someone divided it 100 years ago, or it's a small lot because 89L did it. I'm not so sure I'm following the difference.
Sure. Well, if it had been a small lot created 100 years ago, we would have those grandfather protections in 40A Section 6. So that's where that distinction with 81L comes into play, is that because of the way this was created, we lack any protection. Because previously, we would have only needed a variance had this lot been split on a 40A. If it had been a subdivision like those Hingham Road, Falmouth, any of those, where those lots are substandard, those people don't need a variance because those lots have this grandfather protection. And then this 81L was seen as a pretty good way to split these multiple family complexes, one family, multiple building complexes. But the way the law came down and has been, I would argue, correctly interpreted by the Supreme Judicial Court has made it so that I would strongly advise clients against recording a plan with this prior to getting variance relief, because now they've created a lot that doesn't have protection, but that was through no fault of my client and also was not the way the law was when the previous owner did this split. So it really is 81L that creates the hardship here.
So what you wrote is, in pallets, the court held that existing structures on lots created by 81L division maintain grandfather protections.
That's true.
So we're here because that structure's been gone for 5 years.
We would be here if that structure went down today. We don't have the protection to rebuild it that you would have under 40A6 with the presumption of 2 years. None of that protection remains. So even if the gas station on the previous owner's watch had burned down, he would not have had the right to rebuild. It's a really unusual statute that creates basically a sticky situation if you divide lots this way, because it's been interpreted by the court that it's an option for people to go around the zoning board. So they said that that's obviously not the way to do it. You can't go in front of the planning board, create lots, and then have those be a launch pad to avoid zoning. And that launch pad terminology is something actually they quote in pallets. So now we are here. We want to have the lot rendered buildable through those two variances, but we'll build within all of the other R20 requirements, setback, all of those things. No further detriment to the public good. We have enough room to do hammerhead turnarounds so that no one would be backing out onto the road. Traffic would be a negligible change. It's not that it's the Pike, but it's a relatively busy portion of town. So I don't think adding a couple car trips a day is going to make a huge difference. Shouldn't have any real effect on pedestrian safety or anything. There's a good sidewalk there. So it's just an unbuildable lot without this board's help. And again, you do sit in equity, so it's an opportunity to serve the greater good. We have a lot that previously was a gas station and then entirely blighted. My client got abandoned cars and things of that nature off of there, has been making sure the grass is trimmed back. But if he can't do anything with it, whether or not he can get off it for a small amount of money or has just taken a total loss on this, there's really nothing in the long term that would stop this lot from being a blight in a section of town that has nice houses and businesses around, and we could help add value to that neighborhood.
So I'd like to have our zoning enforcement officer weigh in at this point. I mean, I'm hearing some things that I haven't heard before. What do you think, Bob?
Well, you actually had a case that involved an 81L probably about a year ago, and it was on Ferry Street where there was a compound, just like attorney was describing, and they had 3 buildings on it and they split it. But before they split it, they went up for relief for you to grant those variances. I think it might have been 13 Ferry Street, and without you giving them those variances, just like this case, if anything happened to the structure, they couldn't put it back. We do have a couple instances in town where you can see 81L came into effect. And I think that you were this didn't get, the 81L did not get split in 79. It got split in 89 after our zoning bylaws took effect. That's why it has no protection. Jordan's garage and the building that had the barn next to the deli, that was split through 81L, where there's clearly no frontage on both those properties, and they just did the best they can. And then if they don't have protection with the variance, they're going to have a hard time rebuilding if anything ever happens to those other structures. But in 13 Ferry Street, you did grant them the relief, and then they sold off the property. I don't know if you remember that case or not.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do.
So that's basically mirroring what's going on here. Years ago, it didn't matter. It didn't matter on an 81L. You split it. You did the best you could for meeting the bulk requirements. But in 2013, the court said, you know what? I think we're going to look at this again. And if you don't meet your bulk requirements, you're going to need a variance to regain the protection. And that's what's throwing chaos into our zoning right now in just not Grafton, but in Massachusetts. Did I clear that up a little?
A little bit. So yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting, because on the face of it, I mean, I don't think that there's the required findings for a variance. It's like any other small lot, right? I mean, it's a small lot. It's not like we're talking, a lot where we're forced to do something because of the soil or even the shape of it. I mean, it's not all that strange of a shape even. So, the requirements for variances just aren't there. So, but unique required finding where unique soil conditions, shape, or topography. Man, how do we get that? All right, let me think about that a bit. Other questions or comments from the board? Oh, come on, you're all quiet today.
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead, Bill.
Oh, go ahead. No, Brian, go ahead.
Wouldn't unusual soil conditions be the environmental state of this lot?
Yeah, but that's not really forcing the problem, right? I mean, there may be soil conditions here, but that's not. usually when we're talking soil conditions, it's, the rock outcropping that forces the house to be over against the setback rather than in the center of the lot where, you might normally put it.
So even not from a zoning standpoint, but is this a buildable lot from an environmental standpoint?
Yes, if I could jump in there quickly.
Yeah.
Obviously, there were concerns about the fact that this formerly had an industrial or a commercial garage on site. So there was a DEP RAO issued following site cleanup. So on November 2010, ECS out of Worcester signed off on this site being clean. So I'd be happy to submit all of that stuff. We have 180-page report, but if you take my word for it, this site has been cleaned up.
Does that mean it remains clean, or
Yeah.
can other chemicals on the site?
There's not really been anything on it since that garage was demolished. But I think to go back to the chairman's thoughts on this, one option, obviously 81L created the hardship, but in the fact that the shape of the lot is now undersized, I think you do have an opportunity to sink your teeth into the fact that it is a hardship based on shape, because if they had happened through, I guess, fortuitous foresight, create 20,000 foot lots there, this would have worked. But obviously it happened before the zoning changed. And nowadays with this pallets case, I would recommend any client to really think strongly about 81L. It's a much different regulation, but I think it is going to shape that there's insufficient square footage or a lack of the shape required.
Got it.
Yeah, I think that's the best we're going to have. And that's weak, right? I mean, if we do that, then anyone with a small lot can come, before us and cite that. That's really not the intention for for the shape finding. Bill, go ahead. Well, wait, you want to say something?
Yes.
Wait, hang on, Bill. Stand by. I'll let the attorney respond.
Sorry, I just wanted to speak to one thing about what you said, that I entirely agree with you, and that Grafton is a town where people know that you can't split a small lot and create two lots. It's just not going to fly in the way you allow development, because that would be going to the hardship. But here, the law changed, and the way the law was interpreted changed. So we didn't go to this hardship, nor did the previous, the person who split it in 81L. A change in the law created that, or in the enforcement of the law created that hardship. So I agree with you that you can't create substandard lots in Grafton. It's well known that that will not get given variance relief, but this isn't that situation. So I don't know that other people.
So we have to craft things. You didn't by chance give us the findings anywhere in your write up here, did you?
I wish I had.
Yeah, I wish you had too. All right, Bill, go ahead.
Yes, the question I have on this lot, and the thought in my mind, is that we're being asked to build or to create this buildable lot. The present owner bought this land, I would assume, without any contingencies built in. That, typically if I were making this investment, I would ask for it to be a final sale on the findings of a variance to make it a buildable lot. So, my thinking on it is that it lacks, and it's not a small amount, it lacks a lot of frontage. It lacks, a third of the 20,000 square feet. And, I'm being asked to create a buildable lot, in my mind, to correct someone's bad investment. And I'm not so inclined to do that. I think that the issues, and I've read all of the reports that were in the package that Bertina sent out, and I didn't read them all, I have to confess, a lot of them in the environmental reports. But the fact is that it's a very small lot, and you're putting two family house in there, you're putting 4 cars on it. And there are many other people in town that would like to create a lot that from an excess undersized parcel on their land where they could put up a 2-family house and 4 parking spaces. So I don't feel that that this is something, it's not a hardship in my mind. I think it's the hardship is the person bought the land without the approved variance to make it a buildable lot. So now they have an investment that is of little value to them. It may be more valuable to the people to the right and left of it, in that respect. So I don't feel a need to, I don't feel a hardship on this variance bill.
So Bill, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If the prior owner were here before us, would you feel the same way?
Yes.
Why?
I mean, it's not a question of if the prior owner was here and applying for the right to build a 2-story house on an undersized lot, I would say that we're creating that buildable lot. So the fact is that somebody sold that and somebody bought it, obviously. But yeah, I still think it's an undersized lot. It's not buildable in its present state. What was there before was a garage and the house. So I don't see where it meets the hardship definition. So to answer your question directly, yes, I would say the same thing.
Yeah. So
And if I were buying it, I would have gone before the ZBA to find out if I can get that. So it would be a contingency on anything.
That's not really our problem. Quite frankly, right. I don't take into consideration the money or loss that the owner has at risk. That's not part of our consideration. As I understand it, and I'm gonna ask Bob Berger to correct me if I'm wrong, but this was a legally created lot by way of 81L. The building was legal. The building collapsed, but for whatever reason, if this 2015 decision from the Supreme Judicial Court does not happen, if that doesn't happen, my understanding is the building collapses, they can rebuild. They don't need the variances. Am I right? Am I interpreting this correctly?
Yeah, if the enforcement did not change in 2014, then we would not be having this conversation. But I just want to make another point that if this lot was created before 1986 and it had the protection, it has more than 5,000 square feet and more than 50 feet of frontage, it would have that protection and it would be a buildable lot for a 1 and a 2 family. Okay. Right. So I think that reaching it now, I'm the zoning enforcement guy, so I have to keep up on all the rules and regulations, but I don't even think that your variance requirements are really kicking in because everything is because of 81L. Your hardship is because of 81L, but right. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah, but that's my struggle. All right, so 40A doesn't carve out a variance exception for 81L, right? A variance is a variance, and we got to meet these requirements, and that's that, right?
But but Mr. Chair, the courts are recognizing 81L, meaning they know that these lots are not conforming, and they're saying, you know what, you got to go to ZBA, and you have to get these variances. So.
Yeah, so are the courts basically, and the courts know the variances are nearly impossible to get, so are the courts basically saying, we don't want you building on these lots?
Well, no, I think what they are saying, well, this is an interpretation, but I think what they are saying is, fine, you have 2 principal structures. You have the right to separate these lots because you have two principal structures. Now, in order to protect those structures, you need a variance. I think that's what they're saying.
That could be one way. But they also could have, it seems to me they also could have said just a section 6 finding, special permit, right? We do that all the time with non-conforming. This is a non-conforming lot. Why aren't we just doing, a special permit to extend, alter a pre-existing non-conforming?
Because that's not how the lot was created, unfortunately. We can't cross the stream back into 40A.
Okay.
That's why I'm not an attorney.
And then I wanted to mention one other thing to go back just a second, that whether or not this is 1 or 2 family isn't really germane to this discussion.
I agree, because both are allowed in the zoning district.
And one is planning board special permit.
Yeah. No, I agree. The 1 or 2 family isn't an issue. Oh, yeah, boy, I'm suddenly really hung up. Wait a minute. You just said that it's not a special permit because that's not how the lot was created. We can't go into 40A, but variances are 40A. I mean, we're in 40A here. So it seems to me the courts could have, and I have not read anything about this case at all. This is new to me, which is, bad on me for not actually taking the time to look into it further. But
this is a cutting edge case here, and unfortunately, nothing in my practice or the legislature tends to move terribly quickly. We're going to be in a spot where one of these cases, and I hope it's not this one, ends up going to the court to be clarified on all of this stuff, because 81L needs to be a hardship. And that's a situation where if you make that finding that 81L is the hardship and a court decides you're wrong, it's really no harm, no foul on that. But if you say that there's no hardship here, I just want to go back into the variance section, is that it's a variance can be given, it's financial or otherwise can be the hardship. So, and there's significant case law saying that if money is lost, that counts as a hardship. That has been a way the courts have done this. And our hardship is such that I understand that there will be people that think 2 family is too dense or not. That's for the planning board to decide. But if you say that this lot cannot be buildable, the hardship there is entire, whether or not it's a bad investment for my client or the former guy because the garage falls into the ground. It is an entire total loss for this lot in the middle of town, which will now be blighted for at least 2 years until we can come back to try again and see if hopefully the courts have figured this out.
Yeah, I don't doubt the hardship piece of it. I don't think there's any question, but the part you're leaving out is the hardship has to be owing to the shape, topography, soil adaptation. So we got to tie it back to something like that. So I mean, where I was headed, for the benefit of the board, findings wise, where I was headed is, that we have an undersized lot that's unique because it was created by way of 81L. Yeah, 81L. Now that's a real stretch, but I think it'll make me feel a little bit more comfortable when so-and-so next month comes to us with this undersized lot and suddenly says, hey, he gets to build, so I want to build. Well, we can maybe hang our hat on the 81L piece of it, whereas, so-and-so with his undersized lot won't be able to. So that's kind of where I'm headed finding wise. And I'll be the first to admit this, we're stretching it here. And, I'd love to see the courts straighten it out, but I don't really want us to be the ones to do that. But okay, so I think, Seeth, you had your hand up, or anyone else have any questions or want to comment?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Seeth. Carl, I'll go to you next.
This is a small parcel, and 13,961 square feet of land. We need 20,000. So zoning bylaw, we need 20,000 for this parcel. We don't have that, and the frontage is only 89 feet. That's my issue. We have zoning we have zoning bylaws. We have to follow the zoning bylaws, and if the parcel doesn't meet the required size, then I feel like, there's a problem. Definitely, I mean, two family, again, it's going to be building a dwelling, two family dwelling, or, that's, I don't know. But, the size is too small, and just not that. And I see another letter from 161 Worcester Street, Julie and Ken Sutton. They have, I mean, it's in the package.
We'll get to the communication. We'll get to people's communication.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
we'll
mean, it's a small lot. That's my issue. I mean,
So
certainly we should, there's an issue here.
So see, part of our job here on the ZBA though is to deal with those situations, right? If it was as cut and dry as what you just said, then we wouldn't be here. So I understand what you're saying. It's definitely an undersized lot and doesn't have enough frontage. But the law, Mass General Law, has provided an escape clause or a way out, and that's through the variance process. Now it's a very demanding process, but and that's our whole purpose for being here. So I mean, I get your point. It's small, no doubt about it, and doesn't have the right frontage, but it's not quite as black and white as you were just saying. And that's kind of what we're here for. So just kind of keep that in mind moving forward. But okay, Carl, yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
through you, I have a couple comments. I couldn't agree with you more. This is why we're here. This is why we have the ability to give variances. But I also would like to recognize that the fact that ECS has a pretty good report here that clears the property from chemical. So there's no chemicals on the property. There's a COA, there's a certificate of analysis with it. I just don't want to see this property become an eyesore, because I think there'll be a lot to be lost for the town. There's tax revenues that could be brought to the town. The lot can be embellished by having a nice piece of property on it. And this is why they're here for a variance. I think we have to understand those facts as well. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else on the board? Do we have anyone in the audience from the public that wants to speak?
Actually, can I say something, Mr. Chair?
Hang on, Marion, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
I think the board has the authority to interpret 81L as a hardship in this particular instance for a variance. I mean, a lot of the hardship examples are given in the bylaw are just that, examples. So I think we definitely have the authority and to interpret, the situation Attorney Leno laid out as a hardship. So that's my mindset, if that helps any of the other board members.
Okay. Any other board members? Wave your hand if you want, Mike. Okay.
Just want to say ditto to what you have stipulated and what Marion said. It's I mean, if 81L is the only hardship, and again, going back to that, if we can feel like, as you say, somebody else coming in and saying I have a small lot, but they don't have an 81L issue, I think that's kind of our fallback. So I agree with you guys that it seems maybe a stretch, but I agree with you and Marianne on this.
Yeah. It's a
And I think as well with Carl that I think it would be sad to see this lot sit there and not have something on it to make it better the town. So I agree. So I'm for it.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that's trying to?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So the first one I'm going to click in is Ken Sutton, who has been texting through the meeting. So he's the first one to talk. And the rest of you that are online, I will get to you as soon as Ken is done.
Yeah.
Ken, you're on. You can talk. Introduce yourself with your name and address, please. Ken? Okay, there's another person, Samsung. I don't know who they are. Samsung, who's ever calling in on a Samsung, can you please introduce yourself with your name and address?
Yep. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thank you. My name is Eliza Shara. I'm sitting here with my mother, Beth Cohen, at 165 Worcester Street. So I have a letter I'd like to read on behalf of my mother if I can. She's very hard of hearing, so the Zoom meeting is a little tricky. So she's sitting here, we're listening together, but I'd like to read a letter on her behalf if I may, at 165 Worcester Street, please. Okay. My mother is Beth Cohen, direct abutter to the site. She objects to the request for the variance on this site for a number of reasons. First, Massachusetts law states that variances are to be sparingly granted and only in rare instances and exceptional circumstance. We know the strict criteria for granting a zoning variance, and the first is a finding of substantial hardship due to unique circumstances relating to the soil conditions, shape, or topography of the lot. Massachusetts law has ruled that not making the most profit possible from a land purchase is not considered a substantial hardship. Further, Massachusetts law allows consideration of whether the owner knew he was buying a lot that was not buildable without the granting of a variance at the time he bought it. There doesn't seem to be a substantial hardship where the owner of the site almost certainly knew that the site was not buildable without more land. The second part of the criteria is that even if there is a substantial hardship, it must relate to the unique soil conditions, shape, or topography of the land. The applicant claims that this lot has such a unique condition because it was created under Chapter 41, Section 81L, the approval not required subdivision law, and didn't meet zoning requirements and lacks grandfathering protection. This theory doesn't work. Firstly, it's nothing to do with the shape of the land. A Massachusetts court case gives an example of a 25-sided lot. Second, our own bylaw has a whole section addressing buildability on non-conforming A&R lots and grandfathering. I don't think the bylaw was written just about this site, and it is not a unique condition. Another example is a huge granite cliff or rock outcropping, as the chairman stated. There's nothing close to unique about the soil condition, shape, or topography of this lot. The remainder of the variance criteria is that a variance could be granted without substantial detriment to the public good or derogating from the intent of the law. The bylaw, excuse me. 3 out of 4 abutters are not in favor of this variance, and that is telling in itself. A new construction duplex in the midst of 100-plus-year-old homes brings down the value of the neighborhood. Further, the addition of 2 new residences only further aggravates the existing traffic issues there. Additionally, the lot has poor line of sight. In fact, the day I bought my own home, the applicant's broker called and asked if I would sell some of my land to the owner because they needed it because the existing lot had such poor line of sight. But this lot has problems beyond that. I'm not the only neighbor with a bad water runoff problem as a result of this lot. But the most concerning issue is that there was hazardous waste on this lot. I've learned from 2 different neighbors that this lot was empty and unsold for so long because of the hazardous waste there and the cost of any cleanup. And I understand that a small area of the lot under the garage may have been remediated, as Attorney Leno said. But a significant portion of the property has not been cleared of hazardous waste, and hazardous material under existing pavement is still a key concern of mine. And finally, A&R plans, such as the one creating this lot, often have conditions particular to the lot being created. The creation of this lot said it was not a buildable lot, whether that was because of the zoning, nonconformity, traffic, hazardous waste, or other reasons or combination of reasons I can't know. But please note, the condition did not say the lot is non-buildable without a variance. It said the condition of creating this lot was that it was a non-buildable lot. So in summary, as both a direct abutter and an attorney with over 30 years real estate law experience, I strongly believe that granting the variance for this lot would have no legal basis and would be in detriment of the public good, especially for the neighborhood and residents of it, like myself and my neighbors. It is unfortunate that the owner assumed he could get a variance when he bought the land, but that in no way creates a legal foundation for the grant of a variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we capture the name and address, I think, of the caller, but we probably should have the name and address of I guess it's her mother who
Sure.
wrote the letter?
Yep, so my name is Eliza, I'm the caller, but my mother is Beth Cohen, BETHCOHAN, and she's here at 165 Worcester Street.
And
right next door.
Eliza, what is your address? I need to put yours in also.
Sure, mine is 9 Sherrill Drive in Grafton, right up the street. Shall I spell my last name as well?
Nope, I got it. And then Mr. Sutton, if you would like to speak.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Okay. So first thing I'd like to say, I know I hear this lot as blighted many times, but I've lived here, 30 years. I've never looked at the lot as blighted, but I do look at the management of the property, which is usually the people who own the lot, as, poor management. So when the building fell in, the prior owner, Patrice Rooney, I believe, when he left, he just parked old cars and junk in there and didn't make any real attempt to clean it or make it look good. The new owner, since he's owned it, it's been the same. I mean, it's still no improvements. Like there's no cleanup. There's old fencing and just junk. So I think if some effort were made, put some trees and clean it up, it wouldn't be a blight. So that's just one point. The prior owner did try to sell it to the neighbor, Mike Mitchell, who lived at 163 Worcester Street at the time. He ran Mitchell Drive Shaft. And when Mike looked at buying it, between the purchase price and the cleanup cost for, doing the test drilling and then remediation of any pollution was around $250,000. So he never bought it. I talked to him a few weeks ago, and he said that absolutely, even the people who were doing the remediation up by Worcester Street to get the highway completed said that the whole lot just, needed a whole cleanup. So it was a problem property. That's why it's sat for so many years. And the belief is that's why Patrice never rebuilt, because he just didn't want to take on the cost. And the last point I guess I'll make is the current owner bought it knowing that this property wasn't buildable. So it's not like a epiphany. And then, I think the drainage issues and there should be at least some boreholes and looking, maybe some, x-ray of the ground to see if there's any tanks under there, because there is historically supposed to be another tank that wasn't in with the gas tanks. None of that work's been done. So I just feel like there's more work that has to be done before you can even consider, a variance to build. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I address a few of the concerns raised by the last two callers?
Sure.
For one thing, I think that obviously this isn't an evidentiary hearing, but a huge amount of hearsay where people saying they know what the previous owner thought or what conversations happened between people that weren't them. And I don't think that has any bearing on this matter. And then the idea that someone would be incentivized to clean this up because it's not buildable and that would somehow make it the right option to give a variance doesn't jive at all. My client is here because he bought a lot. He may or may not have thought it was buildable. It really is irrelevant to these proceedings. But now he has an opportunity where if this board deems that we have the hardship and grants this variance, we do have an opportunity to improve this neighborhood. So the idea that we would plant trees and clean something up in an unbuildable lot, well, happy to do that if the town wants to buy this lot for what he paid for it. But I don't think that that's realistic either. So I just am a little bit flummoxed by the neighbors' thoughts on this. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I think it's important to say.
I will say that I really am struggling with this. I'm really hung up on the fact that in 2015, the Supreme Judicial Court said a variance was required. And I until somebody really can explain why they didn't, it seems like they could have done something along the line of a Section 6 finding. Because really, it seems like what we're trying to do here is say this thing was buildable and it should remain buildable. That's what we do with Section 6 findings, with our special permits, right? Non-conforming, pre-existing non-conforming. It's a house now. It should be able to remain a house, and they should be able to extend, alter, etc. So it seems like they could have said that, but they didn't. They said variance, right? And that's a lot harder. But on the flip side of that, I'd love to go back to my citizen planning training collaborative book.
Mr. Chairman, there's still 3 more people that would like to speak.
I'll get there.
Okay, just wanted to let you know.
Yep, but thank you. So this book that I go to a lot, and I'm just going to read one paragraph here. talking about variances and talking about hardships, and what it talks about the Adams versus Brawley case, Counselor. I don't know if you're familiar with that. In other words, a situation arises where government action is the cause of the hardship. In Adams versus Brawley, which was actually MDC taking land, but hear me out. The court upheld the grant of a variance to a petitioner who lacked requisite frontage due to an eminent domain order by the MDC. The court's support for the variance turned on the fact that the petitioner had neither caused the hardship nor could have anticipated that such hardship would arise. In other words, but for the actions of the MDC, the variance would not have been required. And boy, that sure smacks a lot of this 2015 case. Now, granted, the applicant who's before us, he walked into this by buying this land. But as I mentioned earlier, if it was the prior owner that was here, then, that last sentence I read really, boy, that sounds a lot like what we've got here, right? They didn't need a variance before that case, and now something comes along and suddenly they do. So, but by the same token, the court isn't writing laws. The court isn't taking land. The court's basically interpreting the laws, and basically the court's saying that the way the law is, this is what should have been. So I'm struggling with this. So other people want to speak. Katrina?
Okay. Yep. Mr. Stevens, you can talk. Give me your name and your address.
He's unmuted. Mr. Stevens is muted.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I just like to, 31 Brookside Drive. So I was just taken back by some of the comments regarding the A&R, because that's usually fall underneath the planning board. And then just the fact of the hearsay of this person, and the shape of the lot is, it's an odd shaped lot. So it's, it is what it is. I don't think there's any detrimental when someone puts a new house in. How does that bring down property values of abutters? So I just think that was a weak argument to say it's an improvement to the neighborhood. It's an improvement to the town of Grafton. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, and then there's Nick.
Nick is muted. Nick is muted.
I'm unmuting him. Nick? Nick, do you want to speak at this hearing? Okay, and Sujita, do you want to speak? Unmute. Come on.
Mr. Chairman, who are the voting members tonight?
So it would be myself, obviously, Ms. DeRosiers, our vice chairman, Ms. Reed, our clerk, Mr. Yeomans, and Mr. Waller.
Okay, I guess Nick and Sujita don't want to speak. I'm trying to get them to speak, but.
Okay. If either Nick or Sujita is hearing us and for some reason are having technical difficulties, feel free to type something into the chat. Okay. There was one letter, I think, received in opposition. Katrina, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe it's the one from either the Cohens or
No, the Suttons.
Sutton, which, yeah.
And we all have that in our packets, right? So we've seen that and read it. Anyone not have it on the board, please let us know. Any other communication, Katrina?
No, that was it.
All right. So to summarize here, we've got obviously an undersized lot without enough frontage. We could try to claim that the unique situation with this lot is the fact that it's undersized and created by 81L. That's a stretch, right? That's a stretch. And without the variance, the lot cannot be developed. It can't be restored to what it had. It used to have a building on it, and it cannot be restored to having a building on it. Whether it's a single family or two family, things like line of sight and that sort of stuff. That's for the planning board, I think, to deal with, not necessarily us. But, you know, without this variance, you know, it can't be, you know, it can't be built on. And then as far as detriment, you know, I think that, I don't know, I hope we can agree that, you know, a home on this lot would be an improvement to the neighborhood and not a detriment, be it a one family or a two family. So I think that's roughly, you know, kind of our findings, and I've got that somewhat written down here, and, you know, if we want to move forward with it, I can, you know, craft those findings and work with Katrina on a decision.
Just one note on that.
Please.
I mean, how do we get to the finding that a building on that lot is not a detriment? I'm not saying that it's beneficial. I would say it's neutral. You know, it's kind of restoring the home that was there.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we don't necessarily have testimony to support that, but I think it's like you said, I don't think it's a detriment, right? And that's for a variance. It doesn't have to be an improvement. It has required finding 3, public good. Variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent and purposes of the bylaw. So I always have trouble with the second part of that. You know, that quickly gets me to what Seith was saying. The bylaw says you need 20,000 square feet. That's, you know, how can it not derogate from the intent of it? But likewise, you know, if we took that literally, then we would never be able to grant the variance. But without substantial detriment to the public good and without nullifying, so, you know, I think it's, I don't know, I guess it's just, isn't that just kind of given that a house in a neighborhood full of houses is not a detriment? I don't know.
I'm there.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. So if we were to grant this, and I probably should know this, but so if we do allow the variance, will the Mr. Meridian still have to go to the planning board or to Mr. Berger?
Yes.
To make sure that, well, not to Mr. Berger, but to make sure that, like, it's following, say there is runoff on the neighbors, or what if the land is not, you know, maybe it is still contaminated. I mean, we can take Attorney Leno's, you know, we can say, yeah, he's right, but don't we, somebody has to know for sure that that lot is not contaminated. So there's other steps, right, after this, that if we allow the variance, that's all we're doing. He still has to go through other steps to make sure that he can build a 2-family on this land.
Yeah, he has to go to the planning board for the permit for the 2-family.
Okay. Right.
If it was a 1-family, then he would just go for a building permit, right?
Yes, if it's a 1-family, it's a right 2-family special permit.
So how about the idea of the soil being contaminated? Was anything?
That's building.
That'd be up
The
to
building
you.
department. Yeah.
So those concerns of the neighbors, those kind of concerns would still have to be addressed down the road if they were worried about that.
Yeah,
Just allow
absolutely.
him to build a 2-family on a lot that needs a variance, basically.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Bob, how do you do that? I mean, you don't require, you know, borings on every lot that gets built. I mean,
The contractors, we're building a library, right? And they hit pay dirt. They hit all this oil. So they know what they have to do because they can't get rid of the soil. It's like you're taking down siding and you just hit asbestos siding. I'm not looking for it, but if it's there, it has to be dealt with.
Yeah, okay.
By regulations.
Sure. Yeah, if somebody wanted to not follow regulations, they could not follow regulations. I suppose if, you know, the back corner of the lot is what's contaminated and it's not getting disturbed, then no one will ever know that, but there's nothing we can do, right?
Right.
Okay. Counselor?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, my client is a Grafton resident and it's not some fly-by-night developer here. So I do think one of the other things your board has significant leeway with is if you want to condition certain things, the things that are giving the board heartburn right now are understandable. We do have this RAO report, DEP sign off, all of that stuff. But if you need more information on something like this, I certainly think my client would be amenable to conditions. But obviously, if there are any site conditions that are substandard here, nothing really happens if there's no incentive to build on this lot.
And you know, I think that, you know, getting into some of that is really kind of going beyond the scope of what we should be focused on, I think. I think we're okay there.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion or comments from members of the board?
No, actually, to that point on conditions, though, you know, if the only soil testing that's going to happen is, you know, digging the foundation, for example, or, you know, constructing the building, you know, can we condition it on, you know, some sort of environmental sign-off or environmental review of the entire lot?
It's outside your scope. That's a planning board.
Yeah, so you know, my understanding is, you know, we actually have pretty broad ability to condition variances and special permits. So, you know, I think we probably could do that. And you know, if you know, so I think we probably could. It's not necessarily something that we typically do. And, you know, I'm struggling for the words. I'm not sure how we get to that point. You know, how do we get to that point where we think that that's something that's necessary? And why here and not on some other lot that we've been, you know, in one of the hundreds that we've done, you know, through the years? So,
well, because we know there were parts of this land that was contaminated and based on the prior usage.
yeah. So then the next question, what exactly is the condition? Because that's not necessarily an area of expertise for us either. So what are we actually asking them to do?
Liza has a question. Go ahead, Liza.
Thank you. So in discussion with my mother, Beth Cohen, and I do need to correct myself. We're at 167 Worcester Street, not the site itself in question 165. So I apologize about that. So as we're talking about the variance, one thought for consideration is regardless of what happens to the lot, if the variance is granted without legal basis, it's vulnerable to appeal at the taxpayer's cost.
It's not the taxpayers' costs. Taxpayers won't pay for that. That's up to the applicant.
It's not the taxpayer's cost, it's up to the applicant.
Make the appeal.
Mm-hmm.
If it's overturned, there's no town council involved if it's overturned? Okay, my apologies. I guess my point is that while I understand the concern about what will happen to the lot if a variance isn't granted, I think the purview of the zoning board of appeals is to determine whether or not there's a legal basis for granting a variance. And the fact of the matter is, there's no substantial hardship that's due to this size, topography, or soil conditions of that lot that are unique. It's a fact, it doesn't exist. Thank you.
Yeah, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I've been doing this a long time, and I understand exactly what you're saying.
Great, thank you.
Katrina, yeah, if you would mute the non-panelists, please, because we generally don't, you know, if we were all in a room together, we wouldn't necessarily be able to just speak out like that. So thank you. All right. Any further discussion with the board? So at this time, I'd entertain. No, I close I will close this hearing to public input.
Mr. Chairman, I know it's sort of unusual, but not being in the room, I don't know if there's any possibility of getting a straw poll here. I just have no way of knowing if I should be continuing this or if I should go to a vote here because of the unusual circumstances of Zoom. And I don't want to get my client stuck with a vote where we're waiting 2 years or have to appeal this without knowing.
I understand what you're asking for, and I don't know how to deal with it. I can tell you this, I'm not comfortable with the variance. And I don't know, Mr. Yeomans has voiced displeasure as well. And I don't know if he's still there. But I'm really struggling with it, to be honest. And I'm trying, but personally, I get back to the court has said variance, and they're smart people and they know what a variance means. And you know, and a variance doesn't mean use 81L itself to kind of get around it. So that's kind of where I'm hung up at this point.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that there's more legal research that I need to set out to do here to find the way to make that connection to see if I can find the legal backing for this. So I'd respectfully request a continuance.
That's fine. You know, I like that idea. Simultaneously, Katrina and Bob, I would love to get town council's opinion on this as well. Possibly even, you know, some time that I can maybe speak to her or someone in her office about this as well. Maybe even have them at a follow-on hearing if they have enough to say or something. You know, this is uncharted territory. It's very, it's quite frankly, it's why I'm on the board. It's something that really, you know, challenges us to think. So the applicant has requested a continuance. I have no idea when our next meeting is. What do we have anything in the hopper, Katrina?
No, nothing. I mean, until we get something from the 240Bs that have to submit before us, I've got nothing.
What 240Bs?
Fisherville's resubmitting the revised plans.
I know that one.
And then Providence Road Commons has to get the letter from, and that one. Just those two, but.
I thought there was another like real 40B coming out.
Oh, no, nothing new. No, sorry. NPC's on the two current ones.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Didn't mean to scare you.
So, you know, if we just look like maybe a month or so out, does that seem reasonable to you?
I think everything with COVID we're all doing our best here. So whatever works for the board works for me and my client.
So we're June 25. If we just go for like,
We're still on right now. Can I call you right back?
Can you please mute my client, Katrina?
Absolutely.
I love getting to say that.
You know, if we just maybe go for July 23rd, you know, it gives us a couple of weeks if anything new comes in.
Okay.
Actually, let's go for July 30th, just to give us a little bit more time for any new cases that come in.
Okay.
Anyone have a problem with July 30th? Anyone going on a vacation anywhere?
Let me check.
A cruise or?
Oh, goodness.
Anyone? So, Kay, I see your mouth moving, Kay, but you're muted.
I was saying, I wish I was going somewhere on July 30th. Wouldn't that be nice if we all could go somewhere? No, I'm here.
So entertain a motion to continue case number, whatever this is.
866.
Continue case 866 to Thursday, July 30th at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
So motion made and second. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
How do you vote? Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. So we'll see you on the 30th at 7 o'clock.
Thank you all for your time. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
All right.
Bill,
Yes.
should we, Katrina, should we save all of these papers?
I would.
Probably I would save them, yeah, for the
Okay.
continuance. If I get anything new in, I will send it to you, but I would save everything you have.
Okay, thank you.
So next order of business is 4 Park Court, a special permit for a roof overhang.
Robin, if you could unmute yourself.
Hi. Should I go ahead and introduce myself?
No, I gotta read.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
I gotta do a song and dance first. Next order of business is whatever I just said for a case. At this time, I'd ask the board to introduce themselves. I'm Bill McCusker, chairman.
Vice Chair.
Okay,
Kay Reed, clerk.
Bill,
Bill Yeoman's member.
Brian Waller,
Brian Waller, member.
Carl,
Al Parisi, alternate.
Steve,
Seat Ganesan, alternate.
Bob,
Bob Berger, zoning enforcement officer.
Katrina.
Katrina Koshvo, CBA secretary.
The way we will proceed is the clerk will read the petition, and after the clerk has read the petitioner will have the floor and have the opportunity to present their case. There's a 15-minute time limit for the petitioner. Time limit can be extended with consent of the board. The petitioner shall present required information, and all comments should be specific. Anyone wishing to speak in favor will have an opportunity to do so. Letters in favor will be read into the record. Anybody in opposition will be allowed to speak. Letters in opposition will be read into the record. Opposition also has a 15-minute time limit. After all the evidence presented, the board will enter discussion, hopefully come up with a decision. At any time during this hearing and prior to a decision being made by the board, the petitioner has the option to request that the petition be withdrawn without prejudice and continued until a later date at which further evidence specific to the petition can be provided. Anyone wishing to speak, please signal us in some way. And when you do get recognized, give your name and address for the record. The board may ask questions time to time. However, all conversation should be directed through the chair. At this time, I'd ask the clerk to read the petition.
Case number 867, the Grafton Board of Appeals has received a petition from Robin Larea, I'm sorry if I didn't say that correctly, for 4 Park Court, requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a special permit to allow her to extend a pre-existing non-conforming structure with the construction of a roof overhang over 3 individual sets of exterior stairs. The board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, June 25th, 2020 at 7:15 to consider this request. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection on the Town of Grafton website, the Zoning Board of Appeals 40A page. Zoning Board of Appeals, William McCusker, Kay Reed, Brian Waller, Seith Ganeshan, Marianne DeRozier, Bill Yeomans, and Carl Parisi.
Do any of the sitting members need to recuse themselves from this case? Okay, so at this time, the applicant has the floor.
Hello, everyone. I am Robin Lorero, and my address is 4 Park Court. I'm the owner. And basically what I'm asking is to have some roof overhangs put over 3 sets of stairs. And the reason I am asking for that is basically for safety for my tenants during the, the winter, from snow and ice and everything for the, the bad months of the year. So it's basically just for safety for my tenants. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking at the one drawing that's here, and it's not clear to me what is actually being added onto. Katrina, can you?
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now. Give me 1 sec.
Oh, I see him now. All right. It's really faint, but it says proposed roof overhang. So one building has, so there's 2 buildings on the property. One has the overhangs, the other one doesn't. Is that the situation?
That's correct.
Okay. And these overhangs are not within the setbacks, right?
Correct.
26 feet,
Yeah, they
26
don't,
feet or something like that.
yeah, the setbacks, they don't fall within the setbacks.
Well, the actually, they do the side.
The side setback, the industrial zone requires a 35 side setback, and I have 42.3 and 26.9 at the closest edge.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
It's not a side setback, it's a front setback that you're looking at, because that's it's a paper street, but it is their street. So on my zoning determination, I kind of corrected what everybody was looking at. It's the same relief, but instead of side, it's front. Because Katrina, if you shorten that up, you're going to see that that's a right of way.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that park court is their right of way. That's considered their setback.
Right there.
I mean, excuse me, that's considered their front. Right there, where your mouse is. So they still need the same relief. It's just a different.
It's the front, not the side, like I had said.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And
You're
this
welcome.
is not more non-conforming because it's just over the stairs that already exist?
Well, we do have in our bylaw, you can go into your setback, front, back, or rear 3 feet for eaves, steers, and so on and so forth. But this is already beyond that. So, and this is not a single family. There is nothing I can do to give them by right. They just need to get the special permit in order to construct it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Yeomans.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we know Mr. Berger, do we know the actual dimensions? That's what's in the proposed, in the red line? So we know what the dimensions are of the overhang that they're asking for.
I'm not in my office. And you can see, hold on, Katrina, you can see the middle one.
Yeah.
Under 5 and 7 is going further out than what they have. So it's not like they're just going over putting a doghouse directly over it. It's not very clear of what they're building here, but I understand what their concept is. They're going out.
Okay, I understand what they're wanting to do and providing the safety, but my thought is it going out 10 feet or 12 feet, or is it, it's a covering? Is this going to be enclosed also? In other words, are they creating like a porch, or is it just going to be an overhang over the exterior stairs?
Just an overhang.
Okay.
Yes.
5.9 feet.
5.9.
Okay.
All right. Do we have somewhere where this structure was built?
Everything is on the zoning determination that I gave you.
Yeah, I can't find it.
Okay.
I'm sure it's there.
There's a property card. Katrina, can you pull up the property card?
Yeah.
Give me the year.
It was built in 1920, but I'll
There
get
it
the
is.
property.
Found it. It's way down in the bottom corner. So I just kept looking right by it. All right. Structure was built in 1920. Oh, God.
First, if you notice, the first building has the overhangs already. The second building that I'm asking for them on may have had them at one point. That building had a fire, I'm told, by the fire department in 81. So, and I tried to get down to the Historic Society. That's where I got the picture. You may have that picture there that shows that the first building has the roofs. Because I wanted to see if the second building down had them also, but it doesn't show it because it only doesn't go back far enough. So I don't know if they just never rebuilt them. You know, that may be a possibility on that second building down when they had the fire. I don't know that though. I don't know the answer to that.
That's fine. I don't think that that's really important what we're doing.
Okay.
So what I'm seeing here is that the house is 26.1 feet off the front lot line. All right. Does anyone agree or disagree with that? .1 feet is what I'm going with. I don't know if there's other things that make this non-conforming, but basically, you know, structures built in 1920, industrial zone requires a 40-foot front yard setback, and a structure is 26.1 feet off the front yard setback. That gets us the non-conforming structure.
Agreed.
All right. So I think we're good. And then, you know, the current use of the house is still gonna be a house. I mean, this is just coverings over a step. So I think we can, you know, get some findings there for the not more detrimental. All right. Other comments from the board, thoughts, questions? Wave your hand if you want to speak, because I'm not seeing everybody.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
my only concern, since we really can't tell how far out the overhang is, and maybe it can be answered by the zoning enforcing officer. I would be concerned about concentration of ice sliding right onto the sidewalk at this point, since it's kind of hard to tell how far it is from the sidewalk.
Can I say something, sir?
Yes,
There's no
yes, ma'am.
sidewalk. It doesn't go onto a sidewalk. It's a little grassy area in front. And it's
Okay.
5.9 feet. It's very tiny, but it is on that certified plot plan. It does say 5.9 feet out, and it would fall on a grass area, not on the driveway or anything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you.
Other comments or thoughts from anyone? Katrina, does anyone want to speak?
Nope, there's nobody online to speak.
And was there any communication for or against?
Nope, none.
Okay. Let me just go back to my cheat sheet. So we got those two findings to get us the non-conforming. Current use is a residential. God, if I could type. It's easier when I just use my chicken scratch. Residential structure. The neighborhood consists of primarily residences. Changes only to place a roof over existing steps. So I think based on those findings, the you know, the proposal is not more detrimental to the neighborhood. Are we in the WSPOD? They usually put that on.
Yes.
at that point.
Yes, yeah.
But there's no increase in
There's no increase in coverage, no.
Right, but it is located in the so we'll make note of that. The change is an increase of 0%. Okay, got that. So at this time, anyone else have anything they want to say? So I'll close the hearing, the public input, and I'd entertain a motion. Where did my legal notice go? So Robin, you own it, right? You
Yes.
own 4 Park Court?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's going to be a special permit to Robin Loreo. I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly.
That's okay, Lorero.
Lorero. Oh,
That's a tough one.
It actually isn't. It's actually just like it's spelled. And I think it's just basically a legal notice. Extend, hang on a second. A construction of roof overhangs over 3 individual sets of stairs. Yes, a special permit to allow the construction of roof overhangs over 3 individual sets of stairs. And as depicted in Exhibit A, which will be that drawing, Katrina, you've got one of, right?
Yes, I do.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? In my opinion, it seems fairly straightforward. It's almost a shame that she had to come through this process to do this, but it is what it is. So at this point, we'll vote on a roll call vote. Ms. DeRosiers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans?
Yes.
Mr. Waller?
Yes.
Cameron votes yes. So to the applicant, the special permit has been approved and granted here by the ZBA, but we still have to go through an appeal process. So Katrina will type up the decision. Somehow she'll manage to get some of us to come in and sign it, and then it needs to get filed with the town clerk. Once it's filed with the town clerk, there's a 20-day appeal period. At the end of that 20-day appeal period, assuming no one has appealed it, you can pick up a certified copy, and it's going to be important that you have that filed at the Worcester County Registry, so that it's permanently attached to your deed, so to speak. That's a very important step.
Thank you very much.
And if you have any questions about what I just said, Katrina will be happy to help you out.
Okay, thank you. Thank all of you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. That's that one. So that goes away. See if I can find my agenda. Next order of business, and we're only an hour behind, is case number 868, 28 Bernard Road. Another special permit to add a second floor to a dwelling and square off the back right side of a home. Do we have an applicant? We do. Okay, I see him. And all right, so at this time, I'd ask the board to introduce themselves. My name is Bill McCusker. I'm the chairman. Ms. DeRosiers.
Vice Chair?
Ms. Reed.
Hey, Reed Clerk.
Mr. Yeomans. You're muted. You're muted, Bill.
Excuse me, Bill Yeomans, member.
Mr. Waller.
Brian Waller, member.
Mr. Parisi.
Al Parisi, alternate.
Steve.
Sitaraman Ganesan, alternate.
Bob.
Bob Berger, zoning enforcement officer.
Trina.
Trina Kosovo, CBA secretary.
The way we will proceed is the clerk will read the petition. After the clerk has read the petitioner will have the floor and will have the opportunity to present their case. There will be a 15-minute time limit for the petitioner. This time limit can be extended with the consent of the board. The petitioner shall present required information. All comments should be specific. Anyone wishing to speak in favor will have an opportunity to do so. Any letters in favor will be read into the record at that time. Anybody in opposition will be allowed to speak, and any letters in opposition will be read into the record. The opposition will also have a 15-minute time limit. After all evidence is presented, the board will enter into a discussion and hopefully come up with a decision. At any time during this hearing and prior to a decision being made by the board, the petitioner has the option to request that the petition be withdrawn without prejudice or continued until a later date, at which time further evidence will be provided. Anyone wishing to speak, when you are recognized, please provide your name and address. Board may ask questions from time to time. However, all conversation should be directed through the chair. And at this time, I'd ask the clerk to read the petition.
Case number 868, the Grafton Board of Appeals has received a petition from Brian and Christina Zonia for 28 Bernard Road, requesting that the Zoning Board of Appeals grant a special permit to allow second-story addition and square out the back of a pre-existing non-conforming structure within the front and side setbacks. The board will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, June 25th at 7:30 to consider this request. and/or to take whatever action is necessary, including the granting of a finding, special permit, variance, or other necessary relief necessary under the zoning bylaw. The the June 25th, 2020 ZBA meeting may be assessed via either the following means of the Grafton Cable access or via Zoom conferencing pursuant to Governor Baker's March stay at home advisory. This meeting is being conducted via remote participation. Zoning Board of Appeals, William McCusker, Chairman, Kay Reed, Clerk, Brian Waller, Member 2, Mary DeRosa's Vice Chair, William Yeomans, Member, Carl Parisi, Alternate, and Seth Ganasian, Alternate.
Okay, did any of the permanent members need to recuse themselves from this case? Okay, at this time, the applicant has the floor.
Hi, my name is Brian Zonia, and this is my wife, Christina Zonia. The address is 28 Bernard Road, North Grafton, Massachusetts. We're coming before you today to ask for permission to renovate the pre-existing first-story house on the property into a two-story house, and it would be using the same footprint. The only change would be at the top right, it comes in about 1 foot, and we're asking just to extend it out to be even with the rest of the right side of the property to make it a perfect rectangle.
Okay. So the last part that you just said, tell me again what.
Yep. So if you look at the top right of the house, it comes in just a little bit. When we renovate the house to add to two-story, we're looking to just extend it out to match the right side of the existing property. So it would come out of roughly 1 foot, and then it would just be even with where the beginning or the front half of it would be.
Did you need the new plot plan, Katrina?
I thought I put it in there. I can find it. I know I had it. I'll get it.
Well, Katrina's looking for that. Any comments or thoughts from the board? Questions? All right. Well, she's doing that. Let me get my cheat sheet up here.
Okay, here it is. How do I rotate?
Is this really in the R40 zone?
Yep. It's down by Lake Ripple.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. Okay. So let's see if I can find the year it was built this time. There it is. Oh, it's actually circled on this one. 1930. For the benefit of the applicant, I'm just making some notes here that we need to do for our findings.
Sure.
If anyone has any questions, they want to say anything, just go ahead and shout it out because I'm not looking at the screen at the moment. So if you're trying to get my attention, it's not going to happen.
Bill Bob Berger, zoning enforcement officer, or
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chair. The only thing that that I heard is they're extending to try to make it a straight line, and I don't know if that's going to need a variance now. I don't remember if the law reverted back. If you're making something more non-conforming.
Bob, if you look at the plan I show, it's the exact same as the front. They're just squaring it in the back where it was in 1 foot. It's now the same as the front.
I can't see it. My screen doesn't move.
Oh. You want me to email it to you?
Nope.
Okay.
I can see that, Katrina. Yeah.
Um, So it's kind of an important point. If we conclude tonight and grant a special permit, but Bob determines they need a variance, and they're gonna have to go through this all again, whereas we could do both of them the way we write our legal notices now. So Bob, you can't see what's on the screen here?
I see a corner of this screen. I mean, I'm not seeing the whole plot plan right now.
Hold on.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, Bob, you know, there's some numbers that go up and down, or some, you know, a lot of text that's kind of goes up and down vertically. You know, it says 7.7 pre-existing, 6.2 proposed. So, you know, they're going 1.5 feet closer to the lot line for about half of the house.
But as long as the pre-existing for wherever is 1.2 somewhere on pre-existing, then they don't need a variance. And I don't see that. I think they're over. I'm sorry to say this. I think they're over by an inch, because you have the first line is pre-existing 6.1. Then it says proposed 6.2. So they're bringing it back. So
Right.
I think our number is pre-existing 6. So what I think we have to have is 6 is the number. Anything over is going to require a variance if they never reverted that law back, which I don't think they did.
No, Bob. Right now they're 6 feet off the line.
Oh, am I reading this backwards?
6.2.
Yeah, I'm reading this backwards. All right.
How can that be? I mean, is that correct? The house is actually going to be further away from the lot line than what it is right now? How can that be, if all you're doing is the second floor? And that question is directed to the applicant.
How would it be further away from doing that? Is what your question was, sir?
Well, the way I'm reading it, like the corner, you know, to the right, that right corner says 6.1 pre-existing, 6.2 proposed. So the way I read that is, the proposal is to have the house actually be 0.1 of a foot further away from the lot line than it is right now.
The house is crooked on the lot.
Yeah, but you're not moving the whole house.
So I'm looking at this on Google Maps, and it could be that the overhang is slightly shorter, because there is a little overhang over the side for the roof.
I see what you're saying, and maybe that overhang's going away,
Yeah.
or will be slightly less.
Yeah.
It looks fine. You don't need a variance on this. I was reading it backwards. Because it's going away, it's not getting closer.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the line. But what we've been presented for a drawing here, and it says, you know, it says what it says, and based on that, and we'll tie this to, you know, make this exhibit A. So, you know, I guess the applicant comfortable with what's drawn here. Somebody, you paid somebody to do it, so we'll go with it. Go with it. All right, so where was I? It looks like right now it's 6, the closest number is 6.1, no, 6.0 feet off, 6 feet off the, that's the side lot line. All right. Where'd my document go? Look at our 40. Requires 50-foot side yard setback. It is 6.0. Looks like frontage. 50 feet of frontage, so is right. So it also make conforming. 50 feet of frontage. That's really right there. The other side is big enough, the backyard's big enough, the front yard's too small. 8.4. Yeah, even the front yard's going back a bit. So 8.3 on the front. All right, that's plenty. Side yard, backyard, front yard, 8.3. Okay. So I think we've got the non-conforming piece of it. So your proposal is to put a second story on here. It's still going to be a single family house, correct?
Yes, sir.
How many bedroom is it now? How many bedroom, how many bath? And how many will it be in the future? Is that in here somewhere?
In the future, it's going to be a 2.5 bath and a 4-bedroom.
Okay. What is it today?
Currently, it is a 1 bath and one bedroom, I believe.
Do you live there now?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Current use is residence.
Yes, sir.
Neighborhood consists primarily of residential. Current use of residence, proposed use of residence. Anything else anyone can think about as far as what's going on here? I mean, it seems fairly straightforward. So I think we've got the findings for the nonconformity. We have the findings that it's, not more detrimental to the neighborhood. This is WSPOD, I imagine. But there's no
Yes.
change. Actually, I
No.
suppose it's, huh?
There is no change because they're just going up.
Yeah, it's actually
Yeah.
slightly less, but so it is. And I'm gonna put 0%. Anyone wish to speak? We got anyone that wants to talk for or against
Yes,
this?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is Carl.
Yes, sir.
I have a question through you, through the applicant.
Yep.
He does have a shed right now. Is he sure that he wants to remove that? Because he might have to come back for another permit to.
Yes, sir. We are looking to remove that.
Because that's what it shows, existing shed to be removed. I'm just wondering, because in the future, if you want to put it back, you probably have to come back for pull another permit. I'm not sure if Mr. Berger maybe can confirm or not.
If the shed doesn't meet its setbacks, then it would need a variance.
If he puts it
Thank you.
back. Other comments? So at this point, I close the hearing. Oh, Katrina, nobody wants to speak.
Oh, there's nobody online to speak, and I got no comments for or against from any of the abutters.
Okay, so we'll close the period. Yeah, but close the hearing, the public input. Brian and Chris Zonia, 28 Bernard Road. Do you own the property now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, I think the motion is basically special permit to Brian and Christina to allow a second story addition. And I'm just gonna say a second story addition to the home as depicted in Exhibit A. There's a straightforward motion. Let me actually make that note.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All right. And we can vote. Ms. DeRozier's,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. Waller.
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. So I don't know if you heard me say what I said to the previous applicant, but the special permit has been granted by the board. Tina needs a type of decision. Managed to get us in to sign it. After that happens, she files it with the clerk. There's a 20-day appeal period. At the end of the appeal period, you can pick up a certified copy and have that filed at the registry. And that's a very important step that you want to make sure you have happen. Anything else? You guys are all set. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much,
Thank
board.
you.
Have a great night.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
me
you
too.
too.
All right, so that one can go away. I don't need that one. We have minutes from June 4th. Are these the ones that I sent?
I updated the ones you sent me. I didn't send it to everybody else, but I did make all the changes you wanted.
Is there any way we can share that with everyone?
Yeah. Hold
Just
on.
June 4th?
Yeah, but Bill made updates, so bear with me one sec.
I may be able to do it myself, actually.
Mr. Chair, have a good night.
Good night, Robert. Oh, Robert, good job with you and Katrina
Thank you.
on getting it so people can call in and.
Oh, yeah.
Can I stuff?
Okay, so here are the. Oh, to show your red lines?
Yes.
I think I have it in an email, but these are the ones with the changes I made in it. Hold on.
I mean, I could share it, but you need to enable me to be able to share screens. I don't know if you know how to do that.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, I think I can do that. One sec. I can just get my screen up. Hold on. Why is that not moving? I hate technology. There we go. There you go. You can share it now, Bill.
So, are you guys seeing this, the red lines?
Yes.
All right, so, that's the first chunk of changes that I made. Anyone else have any comments or changes they want to make to these minutes? A little further down, a very minor change, just moving some unnecessary detail. Oh, that's it. So that's it. Those are my changes. Any other amendments or changes or?
No.
All right. I'm gonna stop sharing. Motion to accept the meeting minutes of June 4th.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I think, in with the technology, we gotta do everything. We're supposed to do everything with roll call. So, Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Mr. Yeomans,
Yes.
Mr. Waller,
Yes.
Chairman votes yes. Minutes are accepted as amended. Where's my agenda? Is there anything else? New business,
No.
old business, anything we need to talk about?
Nope.
Anyone have anything? So our next meeting is going to be July 30th.
Yes.
Obviously, if any cases come in, we've got at least over the next couple of weeks, we've got some time to get them on there.
Okay.
As far as, we're waiting for more, we're waiting, I guess, for a formal NPC for the one up behind St. James Church. And we're waiting for Providence Road just to get some feedback from the board.
Correct.
The homeowners board. Okay, I don't have anything else.
Bill, a question. Will you be reaching out to town council relative to the,
Yeah, so Katrina, if you could kind of start that ball rolling, that, we'd like her opinion on what, particularly what, that council has said, and maybe even an opportunity to talk. I'd like her review of his, his
presentation?
his presentation.
Okay.
His memorandum. Is what I was looking for.
All right, I'll get it over to her.
And yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have anything? Thank you for mentioning that, Bill.
Good night, all. Happy 4th.
Yeah, motion to
Good night.
adjourn.
Happy 4th.
Good night, everyone.
Well, wait,
Motion.
we need a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
So moved.
second.
Motion made, second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Everybody say aye.
Aye. Bye.
Good night, all.
Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.